South African Democratic Teachers Union is still reeling following the murder of one of its officials last week. Siza Mbhalati, a deputy chief education specialist with Sadtu, was gunned down outside his home in Soweto on Thursday. An investigation is underway to determine the causes of the killing, and the union is calling for an increased protection of its staff. Sadtu General Secretary Mugwena Maluleke joins us for more on the story. Mr. Maluleke, firstly, good evening and condolences on the loss of your colleague in Soweto. What do you know or understand about his killing that has led you to call for a broader protection of Sadtu members?
Oh, thank you, and good evening to your viewers at home. And thank you for the condolences indeed to the family and the teaching fraternity as a whole. We do not have the necessary information because the investigation is going on. However, what we know, what is happening in education, that our officials and our managers are being targeted for various reasons by criminals. And what we are saying as an organization, it is that the department do receive some of these complaints from the officials from the districts who basically are living in fear, and they report these particular matters. But what they report to us is that the department is not doing anything to ensure that there is an alert on some of these particular officials who are doing sensitive investigations that involve disputes and that involves corruption in certain instances, because these particular officials will obviously be vulnerable to organized crime, especially because they are not having any security, and then these people know where they are staying. So at the moment, we are just merely saying that let there be investigation, and the department must take responsibility to ensure that these officials are able to perform their duties without fear, and they must be protected.
Mr. Maluleke, when you say that there are reports of corruption that are reported by some of your officials to the Department of Education, what is this in relation to? What are some of the trends and patterns that you're seeing around corruption in the sector that involves the department?
Some of the corruption that is reported by our members who are district directors, it's around the issue of selling of posts by SGBs and some officials that are there, and these matters are reported, and then the district directors or the principals are then targeted for having reported these things, and obviously knowing very well that these matters will just fall in the cracks, and therefore they're not being followed up. These continue. We have seen a number of our members being gunned down, whether at the gate of the school or at home. And we knew that they have reported to us first, and that they are being followed, that they have problems because they have reported some corrupt activities, whether it is about the school, books that are being bought, or is about infrastructure development, where people are allocating themselves whatever they are allocating, and therefore there's corruption in those particular matters, and they are reported, and therefore these people who are being reported are not being protected. In other words, it's like whistleblowers in our country who are, reporting crime, and then thereafter they're being targeted. In other words, that those who are doing right are the ones that are going to be eliminated, instead of seeing criminals in jail, serving the term, and then we can see justice. We don't see justice, we see death. And therefore we cannot continue to be, having memorial services of our members when the employer basically is not paying attention. Because once there is an allegation that a district director is being targeted, or a chief education specialist, or a principal has received some threats, you have got to be taking, serious steps to making sure that that particular individual indeed is protected.
Mr. Maluleke, when I look at just how localized some of these incidents are, localized in the fact that, this was an official who was dealing specifically with labor relations matters in Johannesburg South, it's unfathomable to me that, when we look at the scale of corruption involved here, it's not hundreds of millions of rand. The fact that it would result in the claiming of somebody's life, not that it would be justified under any circumstance whatsoever. But the point is that have things become so desperate that people would kill just because an official reported an individual that got a job through either having bought it, or are these syndicates just operating at a wider scale that perhaps we as the general public are not aware of?
Syndicates are operating with impunity because they know that there are no consequences. They know that if matters are reported to the police, when you arrive at home after having reported, you will be happy you receive an SMS that the case has been opened, it's been given to so and so to investigate. After 30 minutes, you will receive the same message that says the case is closed. What does that mean? Do we really think that, therefore, we will then be able to address the issues of crime when we are having these attitudes towards criminality, and then we're not acting? So where there are no consequences, people are not. So it's not going to be the issue of the scale in terms of the amount that is involved. It is an issue that says life has become so cheap, and therefore it is not valuable, and therefore they can take your life at any given time, irrespective of whether it's 5,000 or 10,000 that is involved in there. It is precisely because if they can be able to stay out of jail by eliminating you, they would do that because they know that nobody's going to follow them. It's so heartbreaking when you hear some of the stories from our district directors and principals and teachers who basically are doing their best to report this particular, and then they say the case has been closed. After 30 minutes, who has investigated? They say, no, there are no leads around these particular issues. There are no leads. How? Because obviously you have given some form of an indication that this is what is happening. I know that is happening here, but they're saying because you did not point this particular individual per se, that this is a person that is doing this. You will never know who's going to kill you. But what you have is a cell phone that sends you a threat, and you have sent it. The duty of those people is to follow up on that particular cell phone in terms of mapping where this particular cell phone is moving and who else has been communicated. That's not our duty. It's the duty of the law enforcement agencies, but we give them the information, but they never look at it. So that is what we are told by our members, that there are now situations so desperate to the extent that one day we'll just see members themselves saying, we're not going to report at this particular district because it has become so dangerous for them to report in such districts because it is lawlessness.
We have seen previously incidents of communities where communities get very involved in the appointment of teachers to the point where some groups close schools, there are protests that take place. And, you know, schools are really an environment where you have a multiplicity of stakeholders that are all coming together inside this one melting pot. Does that mean that even where you have the corruption and the violence, communities are well aware and in some instances even involved in what's happening here?
The communities are the right people to give us the information, and they do give that information. For example, there are community members who would be calling and say to us, look, we've been approached by so-and-so that he has been asked or she has been asked that must pay so much money for this particular post that has been advertised. And as the community and so forth, we know that this is the situation. They report these particular matters to the IDSO or any other officials in the district, and that thing is just thrown out of the window, and it happens. For example, if you have a principal who at the end of the day just arrived at the school and his only duty or her only duty is to be appointed, and not even having meeting with the teachers to say, what is it that you don't have here? How can I help you? But you are only interested in appointing, to the extent that members of the SGB would go into the classroom to go and chase the teachers when they raise these particular issues, to an extent that SGB members would chase their own children out of the classes. Something big is happening because the parents are supposed to be protecting their own children. But if it's the same parents who are, when a teacher has raised some corrupt activities that is conducted by them as an allegation, they would want to go and chase that teacher out to the extent that they chase their own children. Something is not right. Something is wrong. Parents cannot. I mean, this Solomon principle of saying cut the child into two pieces and then because it's my child, is what is happening today, is that the parents sacrifice their own children in favor of criminals.
Very concerning indeed. Mugwena Maluleke, Secretary of the Democratic Teachers Union of South Africa.